Welcome back to another episode of Text Processing and Analysis. In this video, we will look at lesson 6.3 on getting text out of indexed PDF files. All right, let's jump in. So the objective is that you guys, students, will be capable of extracting text from indexed PDF files. So not all PDF files are created equal. Unfortunately, some are indexed and some are not indexed. So an indexed PDF file is one that has the text and the metadata of the file. And so you can extract that text and you can highlight that text and copy it out. To give you an example, here is the novel Emma by Jane Austen in PDF form that I just downloaded from Project Gutenberg. And you can highlight text, right? You can use your cursor and highlight things. I'll just highlight this, I'll copy it, Control C on my keyboard, jump over to some text editor, and I can paste it, right? And so I can actually get the text out of there. And there it is, Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, rich. That's what I just copied right here, right? Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich. And if I were to do a search, if I do Control F on my keyboard and search for handsome, I just did that a second ago. And yeah, so it actually is searching text in the PDF. So this is called an indexed PDF file. So that means that the text is available to us. Differently, unindexed PDF files are just simply a picture and there's no text available. Even though you can see text with your eye, it's not actually available to the computer. And in that situation, you would need to run optical character recognition, or OCR, which is not in the objective of this lesson. But if you're interested, you could look at Google's Tesseract OCR engine. It's an open source OCR engine from Google, and they support like 100 languages. And I've used quite a few, like a handful of them at least, and it's pretty good. And there's a Python wrapper around that software that you can control Tesseract from within Python. A wrapper in computer speak means a piece of software written in one language can call or use another piece of software written in another language. So you can use Python to call Google's Tesseract and have it do the work and send the results back into Python. Anyway, that's out of the scope of this lesson. But if you're interested, I can show you how to do that. If you want to come into my office hour, or if you have a need, right, I can help you out. But so the objective of this lesson is to look at indexed PDF files. Okay, so here's some logic. This is one way to do it, and I think it's a good way. So in order to get text out of indexed PDF files, there's a great tool called PDF2Text. And it's a command line tool that is awesome. It does a great job. So what you do is you need to download the XPDF command line tools. So if you jump over here, you're going to go to the download tab here on the second from left menu tab. Now you're not going to get the reader. You're not going to get that one. You get the second one down here. It says command line tools, XPDF command line tools. Okay. And you download the appropriate zip file for your operating system. Okay, and it's a zip file. It is, if it's Windows, it's .zip. If it's Mac, it's targiz, as well as Linux. Anyway, download it to your hard drive, somewhere on your hard drive where you'll remember where it is, and unzip it. And then when you do that, it will create a directory that should look something like this. So here it is on the bottom of my screen here, XPDF Tools Mac 4.02. And when I unzip it, I have this stuff in it. And the bin 64 has these executable files. An executable file is simply a file that runs a program that does something with command line arguments that you pass in. Now, that's all Greek to you. Don't sweat it. Don't freak out. I will show you step by step how to use this tool. The one that we want to use is called PDF2Text. Okay. By the way, on Windows, these executable files will have a .exe at the end, whereas on Mac and Linux, they don't have that extension. But on Windows, they will have a .exe extension. Okay, so you download this little suite of command line tools. I think they're great. They work with PDF files, and the one that we'll use is PDF to text. Okay, and then once you've done that, we're simply going to control that PDF to text executable file from within a Python script with a Python module called subprocess, and specifically the function run within that module. Okay, so we're going to use Python to call the PDF to text command line tool and have it do its work, and then we will deal with the results or work with the results after that. So what you do is you pass in the syntax of a command line call or a command to the subprocess.run function. Now right here, syntax in linguistic terms is deals with like sentence order and clause, setting clauses and sentences. That's not what I mean here. In computer speak, syntax means like the actual characters that you write out. And so you passed in basically a command line call into this function in Python, and then it runs it on the computer shell or interactive console. Again, if that's all agreed to you, don't sweat it. Don't freak out. But that's just kind of the idea. And after, so that PDF to text, all it does, it takes an indexed PDF file and creates a corresponding TXT file. And then we just simply use the TXT file to pull into Python and do what we want with it, perform some desired analysis. That's all we're going to do. So we're just going to simply use this PDF to text to create text files from PDF files, and then we'll just do any analysis we want within Python. Okay, like we have with previous exercises. Okay, so let's give it a try here. Download the zipped file, janeausten.zip, from the CMS and unzip it. Okay, when you unzip it, it should create a directory that has four novels by Jane Austen in PDF. Emma, so here's Emma that we just saw a second ago. I was showing you a bit, right? So this is just the whole novel in PDF form I just grabbed from Project Gutenberg. And Mansfield Park, Pride and Prejudice, and Sense and Sensibility. Okay, 4 of them there. Download that zip file from the CMS and unzip it. The first thing is simply to write a program to create a TXT file named emma.txt from the PDF file called emma.pdf. Okay, so you need to perhaps look at the documentation for the PDF to text command line tool here. I linked to it in my lesson plan there. You can see how you're supposed to use it. Right here, it tells you how you're supposed to use it. First, you say PDF to text, or you may want to give the full pathway from the top of your file system down to that executable file so that it knows exactly which one you want. There may be more than one PDF to text on your system. Any options? We don't need to worry about that now. There are some options. And then simply the PDF file, the pathway to the PDF file that you want to convert into a TXT file. And if you give no other arguments, simply the pathway to the PDF to text executable file, space, and then the pathway to the PDF file, it will create a corresponding TXT file within the same directory. Okay. So that is that. And then you need to import subprocess at the top of your Python script before calling subprocess.run. And then within the parentheses, you would put in quotes the actual call to the PDF to text function So that is the pathway to it, space, and the pathway to the PDF file. Okay, so see if you can do that. Take a few minutes here to try and just simply convert or create emma.txt from emma.pdf. Okay, ready, set, give it a try. Okay, welcome back. Let's take a look at how we can do this. And I will grab this little bit of code and bring it in here. So it's pretty straightforward. You just import subprocess, and then I decided to create a string variable that has the shell command as a string. And so once again, within the double quotes, I have the pathway on my computer. I have the pathway on my computer to the PDF2text executable file. So if I were to jump over to Finder real quick, I'll show you what I mean. So it's in users, EKB5, within the directory called xpdf-tools-mac-4.02 / this is a new directory. Bin 64, within that directory, there's a executable file called PDF2text. So I can see that here. If I, start way up here or even farther back, all the way up to like here, there's users, there's EKB5, that's my net ID. And then it is down here in XPDF Tools Mac 4.02. There's bin 64, and then down there is the PDF2text executable file. See, over here it says Unix executable file. So I'm just giving the pathway from the top of my file system all the way down to that file. Then there's a space here. You can't quite see it because it breaks to a new line. Let me make it a little bit smaller so you can see that it is actually on the same line. There's just a space, a single space between the pathway to that PDF2text file. And then now we want the pathway to the PDF file. So this is the pathway on my computer to the PDF file of emma.pdf right there. So I just put that into a string and save it to a variable, a well-formed variable name, right? And then here on line 5, I call subprocess.run, and I pass in as the first argument the variable name holding that string, comma, shell equals true, capital T, lowercase r-u-e. So what that does is it says, hey, I'm going to pass you this string, and it's a shell command. So run it as a shell command on the system level shell. Okay, so let me just, that's the code. Let me just jump back over to my directory on my hard drive with those PDF files. So right here I have, it's kind of hard to see, it's pretty small, but Emma PDF, Mansfield Park PDF, Pride and Prejudice, and Sense and Sensibility PDF. So there's just 4 PDF files here. So when I run the script in Python, it should create emma.txt in this same directory. Okay, so we're expecting to see emma.txt come up here after I run this. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut to run this file. And after a few seconds, it finishes with an exit code 0, which means there were no errors, so that's good. So let's jump back over to the Finder. And sure enough, now we have emma.txt. And I'll just open it up. And you can see here that it simply took all the text out of the PDF file and just put it all into one TXT file. I'll just jump over to the PDF file again. So here it is. Here's this top. So this first page actually is it's a header from Project Gutenberg there. And you can see that's what came through over here. This first part is that same header. And then here we have by Jane Austen, Volume 1, Chapter 1, Emma Woodhouse, Handsome, Clever, and Rich. Right, so that's what came in through here. There's the title, boom, boom, boom. And then there is that first sentence. So it worked. It just simply grabbed all the text out of there and put it into a TXT file with the same name. It just, by default, it uses the same name as the input PDF file. Okay, good. So if you need to stop the video and look at this little bit of code, that would be a good idea. Once again, the real issue here is making sure that your pathways are correct on your computer. Again, on Windows computers, this would probably be C:, users, your NetID. It really just depends. I don't want to give you any like suggestions because it just totally depends on where it is on your computer. So if you want to stop it and try and make it work, go ahead and stop that now. Okay. Now let's try this. So either in the same script or in a new script, read in the newly created emma.txt file and print it to the console. So simply just after you've used that little tool and it creates that emma.txt on your hard drive, now just go ahead and write some Python code to simply read in emma.txt and print it to the console. Right, this is simply file input that we saw previously in I think it was week 5. Okay, so if let's pause the video and give that a try, go for it. Okay, welcome back. Let's take a look at how to go about this. I'm just gonna grab this little bit of code there. I'm gonna go ahead and just comment out this part right here since I don't need it to run again. It's already created the txt file that we need. Right, it's already created this emma.txt in that same directory, so I don't need to run it again. So I'll go ahead and comment that out, the first part there. So this is pretty straightforward, right? We open a connection with the with keyword, open pathway to the file we want to open the connection to, which is emma.txt, not emma.pdf. We want to read it in. That's the default mode for read. So we don't need to specify it, but I just want to be explicit for pedagogical purposes. What we're doing, we're reading in as in file, right? I'm going to call the file connection object in file, new line, indentation. And then I'm going to choose the method. There are 4 different methods that we saw in a previous lesson about how to read in files or how to read in the data within a file after you create a connection. And one way is just to loop over the file connection objects here. So I'm going to say for line in file. I'm going to choose the variable name line because that's what it's going to read. Each loop in the for loop will just be a new line. And then I'm just going to print it out to the hard drive or print it out to the console. Okay, so let's see if this works. If I run this script, and it did it very quickly. You can see down here it printed the footer of this txt file, which came from the PDF file. Right, if I'll just jump over real quick to the bottom of this txt file and just verify that what I see right here is what came through and printed out on the console in Python, PyCharm. Email newsletter to hear about new ebooks. Yep, email newsletter, boom, boom. If I jump to the very top of the console, let's see what's up there. Yeah, here's the header. And then here's where the novel starts. So that worked. Just simply opened the text file and read through each line and printed it. If you'd like to take a look at this bit of code to make that work, go ahead and stop the video now and do so. Okay, let's keep cruising. Now it says modify the previous program and do some post-processing as you read in emma.txt so that the Project Gutenberg header and footer are not printed. So we just want the novel itself, only the novel. We don't want the header and the footer from Project Gutenberg. Okay, a couple hints here. One hint, headers usually end with something like start of this Project Gutenberg ebook Emma, for example. And footers usually begin with something like end of the Project Gutenberg ebook Emma. I'll just show you what I'm talking about. So here's the PDF, and right here it says start of this Project Gutenberg book ebook Emma. Okay, so when you're reading in the text file, which is actually over here, right? When you're reading this in to Python, line by line, you need to look for this phrase. And when you find this phrase, you need to start paying attention to the lines. So up until this point, just don't pay attention to the lines until you hit this line. You're like, okay, now here's where the novel starts. So I need to start printing out these lines and keep printing out each of those lines until you hit the footer, which begins with, let me see, it's still farther down here. Here's the footer of Project Gutenberg. Let me scroll up right here. See that right there? That's where the footer starts. It says end of this project, Gutenberg ebook Emma. And then we have like license information and other information about Project Gutenberg that's not part of Emma, right? And so you can say, okay, look for that starting thing and then start paying attention to these lines. And then when you hit this line that has this phrase in it, stop paying attention. Just break out of the loop that's going over the lines and don't print any more lines. Okay. So give that a try and see if you can make that work. You're gonna have to pay attention to, you're gonna have to read in line by line. And then once again, look for this phrase, at least in the emma.txt, to start paying attention to the lines, and then stop paying attention once you hit this. And you should not, you should make sure you specify RE.I to not have it pay attention to capitalization, because sometimes it's fully capitalized, sometimes it's not. Okay, so try that. You just a little bit of the logic. If I were doing this, I've already done it, but I would create a connection like we just did to Emma, loop over each line, and don't print out until you hit start of this Project Gutenberg, and then start printing out the lines until you hit end of the Project Gutenberg. Okay. All right, so pause the video and give that a try for a few minutes. Make a good faith effort to try and do that. Ready, set, go. Okay, let's take a look at how I approach this one. Conceptually, it's not too hard. It's not even too many lines of code here. The real kicker is trying to make sure you get the regexes correctly and the logic. Okay, so this is what I do. I read in our old friend RE for regular expressions. I'm going to use re.search down here twice. Okay, line 3, I simply make a connection to emma.txt, save it as in file, the file connection as in file. And then within the on line 4, I create a switch called lines to keep, and I say lines to keep false. So I assign the Boolean value false to this variable lines to keep. Okay. Then I start looping over the file connection object. So I'm looking at each line in turn. And I say, okay, if the current line has the phrase start of the or this Project Gutenberg, this is a regex, right? This is a regular expression. Just to zoom in a bit on that regular expression. This right here, I want this full string, but right after TH, you can have either an E or an IS. Sometimes they say the project and sometimes they say this project. So to deal with either one, I just use this regex, right? This is a regex and a regex function, right? We have our R right before the double starting quote. We've seen regexes a lot in other lessons by this point, right? So I'm saying, okay, if you find that to be the case, if you find that the current string has this phrase in it, then switch the lines to keep Boolean value to true. Okay, so change it from false to true, and then continue, which means go to the next iteration of the current for loop. Whatever for loop you're in, go to the next iteration. Just because we don't want that actual line, we want the next one now, right? And then each time it goes through a line, it looks for that phrase. It also looks for this phrase here on line 9. It says, if you find end of the or this Project Gutenberg. Again, it doesn't really matter what capitalization scheme I use here because I actually say ignore case here with this flag, re.ignore case, or short, an abbreviation is re.capital-I. Okay, so if it does find a line that says end of the or this Project Gutenberg, then it breaks, which means that it'll break out of the for loop that it's currently in. So it'll simply stop reading the lines. Once it gets down to the line that has that phrase, it'll stop reading any more lines and it'll be done. Because the rest of the txt file is that footer from Project Gutenberg, right? Okay, so it's looking for, each line it looks at it is looking for both of these. And then if it doesn't hit one of those lines, so all the lines in between, right? And then here it says, if lines to keep. Now, you could actually put it like this. You could say if lines to keep equals true, but you don't really need to because lines to keep actually is true, right? At this point, it should be true. And so you don't need to specify equals true because it is true. So just if true, then print the current line. And that's it. And it'll run through all the lines. And once again, once it hits this end of the Project Gutenberg line, or a line that has that phrase in it, it'll break out of the for loop and not print any more lines. Okay, so let's take a look at it and see how it works if I run it. So it ran quickly, ran through. We got finis, little Latin the end, which is what we see here. I'll just look at the PDF. We jump down to the bottom of the PDF. There's the footer from Project Gutenberg, and there's finis, right? Because it found that phrase end of the Project Gutenberg there, and it stopped printing any more lines at that point. So got the perfect happiness of the union, finis, and if we jump back over to my console, that's what we have: perfect happiness of the union, finis, and nothing more. Didn't print the footer. We jump up to the very top of this console. Yeah, we only see Emma by Jane Austen, Volume 1, Chapter 1, Emma Woodhouse, Handsome, Clever, and Rich. So it didn't print out the header that is at the top of it. Right, it didn't print out this page. It didn't print out this page because it didn't start printing until it found that phrase, this line that had this phrase. Right, it's actually looking in the TXT file. It's not looking in the PDF. It's actually looking in the TXT. So it didn't start doing anything until it hit here and said, "Okay, I found this. I'm going to switch lines to keep to true. Continue to the next line, which is this line, and it started printing." Right. Okay. So if you like to look at my code here, pause the video and look at my code and get something similar working on your end, or you just want to copy it straight across, that's totally fine. Just to get it working, go ahead and stop the video now, pause the video now. All right. By the way, if you have a single PDF file, you could simply determine on what pages the novel starts and stops, and then have the PDF to text tool read only those pages by setting the -F flag and the -L flag, which means first page and last page, within the call to the call to PDF to text, right? So I'll just quickly show you in the documentation I've linked to right here for this specific tool, PDF to text. There is F flag. You can specify the first page that it should start to convert. You can do /L to specify the last page that you want to convert. Okay, so that would work if, for example, in Emma, the PDF of Emma, the first full page is the header, right? And then the second page is where the novel starts. And fortunately, the footer doesn't start on the same page as the novel ends. Let me just try and get down there. I'm trying to get down there. Here we are. So this footer doesn't start on the same page where the novel ends. So you could do that. You could say, okay, start on page 2 and go all the way down to page 252. But that would require you to know what pages those are. And it would require the header to be on a different page from the start of the novel and the footer to start on a different page from the end of the novel, which you can't assume would be the case. Right, let me show you an example right here. If I look at Pride and Prejudice PDF, here's Pride and Prejudice PDF. You can see the header is right here, and the novel actually starts on that same page. So this wouldn't work here. You couldn't use that technique here. It's safer just to go line by line and say, okay, does this line say it's going to start? Does it have this phrase? Okay. But anyway, if you want to look at that, once again, if it's on a kind of a one-off thing, like just one PDF, and you know exactly what page it starts, and you can see that they're on the header's on a different page in the novel, then you could do that. Be a little bit easier than doing the post-processing we did in Python. Okay, next little practice exercise says modify the previous program to create a new TXT file named Emma_novel.txt that only has a novel without the Gutenberg, the Project Gutenberg header and footer. Okay, so rather than simply printing to the screen like we did here, you should push it out to a new TXT called Emma_novel.txt. So that we're only getting the novel, not the header nor the footer. Okay, so you may need to review file output. I think it was lesson 5. I think it might have been 1. I can tell you exactly by looking at these lessons over here. Yeah, it was file 5.1, where we saw how to write out, right? We saw how to read in and also how to write out. So the logic is you're going to have 2 file connections open at once. You're going to have an in-file connection from emma.txt, and you're going to do the same logic of not starting to print, right? Not starting to pay attention to lines until you hit that start, the line with the start of this Project Gutenberg, and you're going to keep going until you hit the line that says end of the Project Gutenberg. And during each line, if you're going to keep the line, you're just going to push it out to the out file that's open. Okay, so give that a try for a few minutes or more, 10, 15, 20 minutes, really try and learn by struggling to make this work and Googling, right? Googling Python space output file type of thing, or file output. If you need to refresh your memory, you can actually go back and look at this lesson 5.1. We talk about file handling, file IO, file input, output. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and give that a try. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look here on how you can do that. It's really quite simple. It's identical to the previous program. Well, not identical. There's 2 changes that we'll look at here. Very similar to the previous program in that we're opening a connection here with the with, right? We have the with keyword there, opening this connection to this in file, emma.txt, mode is read, as in file. Then I have a comma there. This is all in one line, right? You can see that it's all one line 3, but it's breaking down visually because it's such a long line. A comma, and then open, and then I'm opening an out file connection. So now I'm opening a connection to Emma_novel.txt. There's actual underscore there. It's not visible with the squiggly line there, but there's an underscore between the A of Emma and the N of novel. Emma_novel.txt, and this time actually the mode is write, is W, right? So the in file, the mode is read, but with the out file, the mode is write. And I'm going to say that file connection as out file. So I have 2 file connections opened at once. I have the in file where I'm bringing stuff into the Python program. I'm doing stuff with each line, and at each line that I want, I push it out to the out file with the out file connection that's open as well. So the logic here is the same. We have some switch that we first set to false because the PDF file and therefore the TXT file, starts with the header. So we don't want to keep the first lines. We want to go through each line. If we find start, let's switch that thing to true. That will switch to true, jump to the next line. And if we don't find this, this won't happen. And then we come down here. And so if lines to keep is true, then we want to say out file, which is this file object up here on line 3, right? We saved it to a variable called out file. So we call that same variable here on 12, out file dot write the current line, which we call each line, actually we call it line right here on line 5 in the for loop. That's the variable that I decided to use, line, just to make it very clear to me what I'm looking at line in turn, each line in turn. And I want to concatenate a new line break on the right side of, at the end of the line, so that the next line will be on the next line down. Otherwise, it would be all jumbled together in one big massive string. And that's it. So after I run this, I should get Emma underscore novel.txt in the same directory that we just saw a second ago. I'll bring it back up. All right, so we created a minute or two ago, emma.txt, and now we should have another new txt file in here called emma underscore novel.txt. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. And it finished that quickly, just very quickly. Let's jump back over here and take a look. Yeah, there it is, emma underscore novel.txt. Let me just open it up. And there we go. We don't have this header anymore. The header's not there, right? So in emma underscore novel.txt, the header is gone. And you can see behind over here that emma.txt still has that header. If I jump to the bottom of the screen of this file of emma underscore novel, yeah, it ends with finis, the end in Latin. I don't know why they use that. I think that's a Project Gutenberg thing. So yeah, so it didn't print the footer either, or didn't write it out to this file either. Okay, so that's how you do that. Let me make this visible. If you like this, pause the video and make it work on your end. This is also in the solution file in the CMS if you like to look there. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video if you like. Okay, let's look at one last exercise with this lesson. It says modify the previous programs, not just one, but both. The one where you create the TXT files from the PDF, and then where you go through and get rid of the header and footer from the resulting TXT file. So that's why I bolded programs here. Modify the previous programs to create corresponding novel-only TXT files for all PDF files in the directory. Up to this moment, we've only been working with Emma, right? Let's do the same thing for Mansfield Park, Pride and Prejudice, and Sense and Sensibility all at once, like one big pass through all of that. And to make that possible, or to kind of facilitate that, I'm going to go ahead and delete what we just created, so I can start afresh with my emma.pdf. Right, so emma.pdf, Mansfield Park PDF, Pride and Prejudice PDF, and Sense and Sensibility PDF are just sitting there, those four PDF files. Okay, so what I'm going to have it do is I'm going to have it, I want it to first go through and create a TXT file using the PDF to text tool, right? Have it loop over the 4 PDF files and create a corresponding TXT file. Then when it's done with that, move down to looping over the TXT files and creating a clean version or a novel-only version of each of those TXT files. So when this finishes running, in addition to the 4 PDF files, we're going to have a corresponding TXT file that just says emma.txt, mansfieldpark.txt, etc. In addition to that, we'll have a third file for each of these 4 files that will say emma underscore novel.txt, which will have a clean version of the novel without the footer and the header. And we'll have the same thing for the other 3 novels. Okay, so we'll end up actually with what that would be 12 files, 3 per novel. Okay. So that's the idea. See if you can do that. See if you can put all of this in together, all these ideas into one big script that, once again, first uses the PDF to text tool to create text files of the PDF files. And then secondly, goes through all those text files and cleans them up and creates new files called novel name _ novel.txt. Okay, so this should take some time. Go ahead and pause the video and give a good faith effort on making something like this work. Ready, set, pause. Okay, welcome back. Let's take a look how you could go about doing this. A little more involved, right? And I put a lot of comments in this one, so to make it pretty transparent what's happening here. Okay, so let's look through the code here. We're going to import OS, RE, and sub. So I'm going to change directories into that directory that has those 4 PDF files. And then this block of code here, I'm just going to highlight it like this. This block of code simply creates text files from the corresponding PDF files, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get all of the PDF files and save them to a variable called file names. Now, importantly, I want to point out here on line 12 that I say, hey, I want all files in the current directory, right? The directory that we're sitting in, Jane Austen, but only if the file name ends with PDF at the end there. This is a little regex, right? We see regexes all the time. Hopefully you're getting more used to what regex language looks like. So this, once again, you put an R before your opening double quote. We have a backslash to say I want an actual period, not any character, but an actual period. Then I want PDF, and then $sign in regex language, again, is the end of a string. So at the end of the string, I want to see PDF or .pdf. Don't worry about capitalization, just in case PDF is uppercase on the file name. Okay, so that gets our file names, our PDF file names. And then we loop over the PDF files and create corresponding TXT files. Again, we're going to use that little tool, that command line tool called PDF to text, right? So I give the full pathway of that tool on my hard drive, and then a space. Importantly, there's a space on the right side of that pathway. And then I concatenate on the current file name, right? So I go into a for loop here over those file names, and here's a little progress report on 16. I just want to know what it's doing, when it's doing it. And then here on 17, I create a string that will, that is the shell command. Once again, we have the pathway down to the PDF to text tool, space. Importantly, there's a space there. I want you to see that right there. I'm circling it with my cursor. There's a space. And then I concatenate on the right side of that space, the current file name. And I create that string, then I throw it or give it, pass it into subprocess.run. And then I say, hey, run this string as a shell command. Shell equals true. Okay, once again, you have to import subprocess up here like I do. Okay, so that little bit of code simply creates a corresponding TXT file for each PDF file. And then when that's done, we're going to loop over the TXT files and work with them. So here I get the TXT files. Let me change that real quick. Okay. So then we look for only TXT files in that directory, because now we have both PDF files and TXT files in the same directory. We just want to work with the TXT files. So that's why we do this little bit of code here, right? This is list comprehension, F for F in the current, what's listed in the current directory, if you find .txt at the end of that file name. And don't worry about case, just in case there's an uppercase TXT. Then we loop over those TXT files. This is important here. I'm going to loop over the names. So when I'm looping over file names here, I'm actually looping over strings. They're just names. Okay, and so I'm going to call it in file name. And then this is a little progress report there. In fact, I don't need this. This is a little confusing. I'm just gonna get rid of that real quick. That is not necessary. And then I want to create an out file name. I want to take the same file name that I just received, but I want to add _txt to it, right? So what I'm saying is here, take the in file name that is the variable in this for loop and find an actual .txt and replace it with _novel.txt. So I want to add the _novel within the file name so that can be the out file. Again, we'll have the situation where we have in file coming in, we do some stuff with it, the in file in Python, and then we have an out file where we push things out to. Okay, so down here on 35, we open up two connections to those two files, in file and out file. And so here's the file name, right? I'm going to open up a connection to the file name, the in file name, and I'm reading. And I'm going to save that file object as in file con, that is connection. Okay. Then we have a comma. Then I want to open a connection to the out file name that I just created on line 32 up here. And this time the mode is W, right, for write. When we're reading in, we do R for read, which is the default. If we want to write out, we do W for write out. Then I want to save that connection as out file con. Okay, so we have four things happening, four variables here. We have an in file name, we have an in file connection, we have an out file name, and an out file connection. Okay. And then the logic is pretty much the same through here, where we have a switch, create a switch, we start looping over the in-file connection, looping over each line in the in-file connection. And then we're looking for this phrase again, right? If you find that phrase in the current line, switch the keep to lines to keep to true, jump to the next line. But if you find, or when you find end of the or this Project Gutenberg in the current line, break out of that for loop, break out of all the loops or out of all the lines, so you stop worrying about any lines. Okay, and then if lines to keep is true, that is if it's a line that we want, then write out to the out file connection, out file con. Take the current line and add a new line break to it, and then write it out to that out file. And then when you're all done with all of that, all four text files, then just tell me that you're done with all done. Okay, so hopefully this will work. Let me just double check in. The directory just has the 4 PDF files there sitting there ready and waiting. And this should hopefully work. Let's keep our fingers crossed that there are no glitches with it. Okay, now it's working on Mansfield Park, Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility PDF. Good. Now it went through the text files really quickly. It rips through the text files much quicker than the PDF files there. And it's all done. So let's take a look over in the directory. And yeah, now we have 12 files in here. So for each novel, we have a corresponding TXT file, right, that has the header and footer still in here. But we also now have an _novel TXT file that does not have the header nor footer in there. A cleaner version of the novel. Okay. And that should be the case for all of these. We can just double check. Let me just grab maybe Pride and Prejudice novel here. This is Pride and Prejudice _novel. And yeah, this stuff here was this stuff came after the header, so that's why it's in the TXT file. Here's a very iconic first line of a novel. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Anyway, so that is how you could get text out of PDF files and then just work with it with however you want to work with it. Okay, so this last exercise is not going to fit on one screen. So I'd encourage you to just look at the solution file and see how I do this. I put a lot of comments in here to try and help you with understanding what's happening with each block or each line of code. Okay, so that brings us to a conclusion, and hopefully at this point you are able to, or at least see how you can extract text from indexed PDF files with this great little tool, PDF to text. Now, I will point out real quick that there actually is a Python module that's called PDF to text here. There's a Python module called PDF to text. The reason I didn't use that is because there are some software dependencies, some operating system dependencies for Linux and Mac. And if you're using Windows, then you do a conda install. This felt a little bit more involved, and you have to worry about the dependencies, which can be problematic if you don't have them. So I figured we'd just go ahead and download the zip file from the X PDF reader site, unzip it, and just use Python to use that command line tool ourselves. So, but if you want to figure it out, figure out the dependencies to make that Python module work, go for it. If you want me to help you, I can definitely help you during my office hours if you like. Okay, that brings us to the end of this video on lesson 6.3 on extracting text from PDF files. See you next time.